Hello and welcome to the business of being an author. I'm Chris Ashmore. To be a successful author, as with anything in life, we need the right mindset. And according to Andrew Griffiths, it's what differentiates successful authors, how they think, their attitude and their tenacity. In this episode, Andrew shares his 7-part framework on mindset, which will help you build a strong, profitable business around your book or books for many years to come. Well, Andrew, you say that one of the biggest reasons that authors don't make money, it's not marketing, you say it's mindset. Is that right?
It is. I think that the mindset of being a successful author is critically important, because often we think it's just about the book, and I've spent a lot of time saying, okay, well, you've got to have a great book and you've got to have a world-class book, and we've spoken a bit about that. Absolutely. But it's about having the right mindset in a few key areas. And I think there's like 7 areas that I think really kind of make up what that looks like.
Well, let's go through those 7. And the first one, you say your book is an extraordinary resource.
Yeah, we've got to really get in our head and understand that. I don't think a lot of authors automatically get that. I do, because I've spent the last 30-odd years writing and leveraging books, and I see what it's done for me. But we have to try and get others to see that when they're first starting out. It's a big ask, right? It's like, oh, gosh, I hope it'll work. I hope this, all that kind of stuff. But I think if you look at it and go, well, okay, this book that I'm writing or I've written and I've published is an extraordinary resource. And that's what it is. It's a resource. It's an asset. It's a tool. It's a thing more than just an idea on bits of paper, etc. So you can see what I mean there. There's a slight shift in the way that we're thinking. If I look at this as an extraordinary resource, I value it, I appreciate it, I use it, I leverage it, I do all of the things that really matter with it. And I think that's where you've got to start. If you don't really believe that, you won't do all the things that you need to do to make it successful. You won't do all the things that you need it to do to help make money. It won't do all of the things to help build credibility, because you have that self-doubt. And I notice a difference in that mindset with people when I see someone who's proud to give you their book, sing you their book, they are leveraging it, they see it as what it is. Those people who you've got to pull it out of them with a pair of pliers, that they've actually written a book, kind of go, they don't, either they're not quite proud of it or they don't really value exactly what they've got. So that's the difference. That's why you've got to start there, I think.
But that leads on to the second point, which is playing the long game.
Yeah, I've always played a long game in my life with everything that I do. So for me, it naturally kind of applies to being an author and writing books and publishing books and using your book, because again, it's that piece. We write a book, publish it, do the launch. And I always say, well, that's when the hard work starts. Once the book is actually out, you've got to be able to say, well, okay, I need to look at marketing and leveraging this book for years. I mentioned my latest book, or my last book was called Someone's Got to Be the Most Expensive, It May As Well Be You. That came out 4 years ago now, maybe 5 in October. I'm leveraging and promoting that book more today than I did when it first came out. That's kind of, to me, playing a long game. Another way to look at this is I have a 10-year plan, a 10-year publishing plan. So I know what books I'm going to be publishing, when I'm going to be publishing, what products I'm going to have off the back of them a decade in advance. Now, it might change. I might think, I'm going to write a book about this now. But the fact that I have a plan is what the difference is. I think, again, it's like I know that every 2 or 3 years normally I need to have another book come out, because, again, it keeps me relevant with my audience. It keeps me I'm the next phase of my knowledge and my expertise is being showcased. How I'm helping people is happening. It's that piece that keeps going. And I think that's why we need to play a long game as authors, particularly if you want to build that business around your book. It's not stuff that happens overnight. You don't just become a success. You certainly don't sell 1 million books overnight. You don't, just launch a book and everything happens in that first week. you've got to take that long-term approach, and that's really what I see successful authors doing, all the time. They really play that longer-term game.
Well, number 3 in your framework is own being an author.
Yep.
What do you mean?
I think when I was first writing my books, and I didn't really feel like they were real books. My books they're beautifully published. They were 250, 300 pages. They were solid, but they were 101 tips. So it was 101 ways to market your business, 101 ways to create extraordinary customer experiences, and 101 ways to advertise your business. And for me, I felt a little bit less than. I thought, well, they're kind of cute ideas, but they're not like, The Old Man and the Sea, or they're not real books. And my publishers at the time, they used to drive them crazy because I wouldn't even have the word author in my email signature. I would, people say, oh, you're an author, and go, oh, not really. I felt so uncomfortable with that label because I just imposter syndrome and, I'm not good enough, self-flagellate away, all of that stuff. And one day I went in to see my publishers in Sydney, and I was leaving, and I had to fly back to Cairns that afternoon. And as I was leaving, my head guy, Ian Bowring, who was the most wonderful man, he came out to me with a piece of wood, and on it was the word author that went all the way along. Now, this was a huge piece of wood, a metre, longer than a metre, with this word author printed on it. Andrew Griffiths, author, this giant thing. And I'm going, okay. And he said, we need you to embrace the fact that you're an author. You hide away from it, it doesn't help. And so I have to carry this thing with me, right? Couldn't fit it in a bag, I could barely fit it in the taxi. I had to try and put it in an overhead lock. So you can imagine at the airport, everyone's going, oh, are you an author? Are you an author? Like, it drove me insane. But by the time I got back to Cairns and at home, I got the message. And the message was, you got to embrace being an author. You got to own it. If you're going to write a book and publish a book, it's no time to act coy. It's no time to be less than. You got to step into the shoes and say, yes, I'm an author. So now people say to me, Andrew, what do you do? I'm an author, first and foremost. Now, I'm not sitting and writing all day, every day and doing that, but I say that I'm an author, and that reminds me when I'm going through customs, what's your job? I'm an author. I've learned to own it. And now people that are watching, listening, they might go, oh, yeah, but I do all these other things. I don't mind as long as you've got author somewhere in your title to at least, acknowledge that. And that's, again, part of that mindset is not to be dismissive of the fact or feel less than, but to step into it and own it proudly.
You haven't gone as far as tattooing it.
It's on its way, I'm sure, at some stage. The world's nerdiest tattoo, I would imagine, so...
Well, number 4 of your framework is invest in your book post-publish.
And that's really another important piece of the puzzle, is to say, well, okay, once my book comes out and it's published and I've done the launch and all the rest of it, that's it. My kind of commitment is there. So you need to be able to say, well, okay, if I'm going to this trouble and effort and energy to write and publish this book, well, it's a tool, but it's also something that I need to be working on. I need to be building into my business. I need to be making sure that I'm giving it every chance to do what I want it to do. So for me, investing in the book afterwards is saying, well, okay, I've got to make sure that I'm printing plenty. I've got them on stock. I'm investing time and energy. Like, the most successful authors that I see are the ones who commit at least a day, if not more, a week, to promoting and leveraging their book. If you're running a busy business, that's a hard thing to do, right? To say, wow, I haven't really got the time, etc. But you've got to be able to do that. You've got to invest money. Like, I send out books, truckloads of books. Now, for me to send a book to someone, it's probably a $50 exercise per book. By the time I've bought the book, I post it, someone wraps it, goes to the post office, does all of that stuff. Some weeks I'll send out 30 books. Some weeks I'll send out maybe a little bit less. But I've got to invest in that, not go, okay, well, it's going to cost me $50 to send a book. My view is very different to that. If I'm not sending out books, then I'm not building my business. If I'm not sending out books, I'm not sowing seeds. If I'm not, if I'm not sending out books, then I'm missing the opportunity that this extraordinary tool is giving me. So time, expertise, learning more about how to, be better as an author, investing money, etc. Even that example there about being prepared to invest. When I first started to write, and I was still in that space of not kind of fully embracing it and struggling with it, I remember my publishers sitting me down and having a kind of come to Jesus conversation with me about, you got to learn to leverage, you got to promote, and all the rest of it. And I went, well, okay, what does that mean? What does that look like? And I said, well, you're a smart guy, you're a marketing guy, figure it out. And I went, okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. So I started to look around at those people around the world who were successful as authors, and I looked at the likes of Tony Robbins and Louise Hay and Zig Ziglar. Then this is a while ago. All these kind of people that, in my view, my yardstick was they've built an international profile. They've built multi-million-dollar businesses. They've sold 1 million or more books. They've done all those things. And I spent a lot of time researching those people, stalking them, reaching out to them. I remember ringing Zig Ziglar's office once. It's like 2:00 in the morning for me. I rung the office. His receptionist, who he writes about back then when he was still alive, answers the phone. I go, hi, my name's Andrew Griffiths. I'm an author from Australia. I'd love to talk to Zig about books, if at all possible. Okay, I'm never going to get to him. She goes, hang on, love. Zig, there's a nice young Australian man on the phone who wants to talk to you about writing books. And
wow.
You hear Zig going, put him through, and then 2 hours later, I've had this amazing masterclass in being successful as an author from Zig Ziglar, and again, so I had these 10, 12, 14 famous authors. I did my matrix. I figured out what they all did, and I learnt what they all did, and that's what I did. And I learned that. But that was a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of stuff. That again is what I kind of talk about investing in your book post-publish is like learn from those who have gone before you. Look at other authors. What do they do? What's on their social media? What's their marketing? What's their website? Who are they collaborating with? All of that kind of stuff. That was probably my masterclass when I really started to understand if I really want to build a business around my books and make that commercially successful, I've got to do these things.
Mm. And no one else is going to do it for you.
And no one else is going to do it for you. That's right. It's entirely up to me. Mm.
Now, number 5, there are bigger targets than retail sales.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting piece. And sometimes it's a little bit hard for new authors or people even thinking about writing a book perhaps to get their head around. Because when you write a book, the first question most people ask you is, how many have you sold? Is it successful? Is it a bestseller? All of those kind of things. And that's the matrix that people are using to kind of measure the success of a book. When I was starting out again in the book writing space, book sales were a significant thing. And it was always a part of it because I was working with publishers. They didn't really care if I was selling a coaching program for 30 grand. They didn't really care if I was getting a keynote for 10 grand because they weren't making any money out of that. Their only matrix to determine whether it's successful or not was how many it sold. And so for them, that was a matrix, and I had adopted the same mentality a bit like, sales. It's a different world now. Like we had many periods there where we would sell 50,000, even 100,000 books. And the revenue from selling the books when you're making $2 or $3, it was like, okay, that was good revenue. But now the world is a little bit different and there's a lot more authors. It's not about really selling lots of books, even though we think that that's what it's about. So for me, if I write a great book and an example I'll use, one of my books came out a week later, I got a phone call from a guy through the office saying, just read your book. I would love to get you to coach me. He signed up, from reading the book and did a $30,000 12-month coaching program with me. I've worked with him for 5 years now. And so that's $150,000 that he's paid me from reading a $34.95 book. So the moral is not to really make $3 in selling a book. It's to make 30 grand from a coaching program. And this is the underlying principle of the business of being an author. It's not really about selling books. Great. Sell some books. I sell a lot of books in bulk. I do, yes, it is. But the real business model is far more sophisticated than that. And if you're just relying on selling books, you're not going to make a living. It's very difficult to make a full-time living in Australia in particular from selling books. So that's why I try and say, think bigger than the book. Don't measure your matrix just in how many books you've sold. There's a bit of vanity stuff in there. Like I'm a best-selling author 14 times. And that's good for my ego, good for my brand and all the rest of it. But, it's 5,000 books in Australia is best-selling. To me, it's kind of not a lot of books. But if you were trying to sell 5,000 books and get $2-3 in retail sales that you get back, that's 15 grand compared to, going out and actually, turning that book into something more. So looking at the bigger opportunity is really what I'm trying to say there. Get that mindset right. That will help you.
Right. Well, number 6 for your framework, Andrew, make leveraging a philosophy, not a task.
So leveraging is using the book. And we'll talk a lot more about this as we move through the series. But to me, I'm probably a better book leverager than I am a book writer in reality. And this comes back to that point about the come to Jesus conversation from my publishers saying, Andrew, the Maserati's not going to arrive, the villa in the Bahamas is not going to happen, you got to get off your butt and make it work. And it's like, really? Well, that's a bit disappointing. I just imagined all the hard work was done. But leveraging is how you actually use the book. And I use a saying, and it's one of those irritating kind of sayings, but it's like I talk about leveraging, and I say the reason that I'm successful as an author is because I leverage my books every single day of every single week, of every single month, of every single year, of every single decade. And I do. Anyone who knows me knows that I am leveraging my books all of the time. And that can be anything from having a book in my backpack when I'm on a plane. You never know who you're sitting next to. I get emails every week from someone going, I sat next to you on a plane 5 years ago going from here to here. You gave me a copy of one of your books. I'd love you to come and talk at our conference. Like that kind of thing happens. Just some random examples. I was standing in a queue to check into a hotel at 5 a.m. one morning a couple of years back. The guy in front of me was talking on his phone, had a really unusual accent, finished his call, and we just struck up a conversation and chatting, what do you do, waiting for the line to go down. And I gave him a copy of one of my books. And anyway, he's worked with Motorola. And he was in Australia going around to the retail outlets. A few weeks later, I get an email from him saying, Andrew, do you remember me? We met in the line at the Hilton checking in. I'd love you to do an Australia-wide training program for all of our retailers. It was like a $100,000 project from standing in line and having a chat to a guy. I could talk for days about the opportunities, that moment of there, but I'm thinking book. I have books on me. I've got a box of books in the back of the car. I always have books that I'm just ready to sign and give to someone. Every time I stay at a hotel, I leave a book for the general manager. Thanks very much for the stay. I've got a book on customer service. Sometimes I might leave that and go, hey, you need to call me, like you guys did a great job. I'm looking for opportunities, and the book is it's not something I have to go get up in the morning and go look for opportunity for book, check, it just is what I do. Because of the first part of the framework, I understand the book is an extraordinary resource. So the leveraging part of it is like my job is to get it in the hands of people, A, that need it, but B, ultimately, there's a potential for us to do business together. Sometimes, though, it's even leveraging is simply me. A new business has opened up around the corner. I'll drop in a copy of the book. I have no expectation just to say, hey, good luck with your business. I just want to say, good on you. It's a hard journey. I get it. I hope this book helps you to charge what you're worth or to, just do business better. So leveraging is a part of my DNA now. It is a philosophy, not a to-do list. It's just what it is. And that is one of the biggest things that has differentiated me as a successful commercial author, without a doubt. As you can tell, we'll talk more and more about that over in the near future, Chris.
We will. You don't hop on planes with nowhere to go just to have the opportunity to hand a book out.
I like your thinking. I like your thinking. But leveraging is my precursor. So if I get a call from a potential speaking client or an email or something like that, first thing I do is say, before we catch up, can I send you one of my books? And the book's there, we start the call, and it's like, did you receive the book? Yeah, it's fabulous. The book's already sold me. It's already done the heavy lifting. Again, it's a great resource. Learning how to use it's the key.
Well, the point is really the more books you hand out to more people, the more opportunities will come your way.
I'm a farmer. I'm sowing seeds. That's exactly the way that I look at it. I think of all the books going. I see a pile of books on the kitchen table that have been posted this week. Makes me smile. If there's only 2 or 3 books going out, I'm feeling, oh man, I got to lift my game. I got to, I'm getting a bit slack. It's like, the books are going out. That's my entire marketing budget strategy is in books being sent out to people, and they're beautifully packaged. They open it. Now, when we have our call, the hard work has really been done.
Number 7 of your framework, Andrew, is think bigger.
So what I really mean around that, now that we look at all the things we've kind of covered with the mindset of successful author, about appreciate the asset, playing a longer game, embrace being an author, invest in post-publishing, leveraging, looking at bigger targets in the sales and leveraging a mindset. I think you want to apply the think bigger concept to all of that. And so it's a book opens so many doors, Chris. It's like I've sent my books to the Queen of England. I've sent my books to presidents in the USA. I haven't sent a book to the current president, but prime ministers. I don't expect the Queen of England back then to have rung me and say, hey, Andrew, I loved 101 Ways to Market Your Business. But it's a bit of a mentality. I got a lovely letter back from Buckingham Palace saying, thank you very much for sending a copy of your book to the Queen. She's appreciated. Will be added to her extensive library, and we wish you great success. I got a letter from, I think it was Bill Clinton now as well. But I do that for me, probably more than anything else. I look at it again because I appreciate what it is, that I use my book to open doors. I know that I can get to just about anyone in a non-weird, creepy way, and in a potential kind of whatever it might be. My book or books will open those doors for me. And it's about, thinking bigger. A lot of the time we go, oh, well, I couldn't possibly partner with that person. Why not? When you've written a book and you've got the credibility of that book, why wouldn't you reach out? Reach out to anyone. Me ringing Zig Ziglar in the middle of the night, going on the off chance. Like, the reason he took the call is because I was an author. And it changes how people look at you. And I think that sometimes we don't know to use that as a tool again. But I have no hesitation on reaching out to anyone, if for whatever reason, for business, for speaking, to support, whatever it might be. And I think we've got to look at ways of just thinking bigger about what we could do with our books, and ways that maybe nurture us. Like, I love sending books philanthropically to schools or groups or whatever it might be. I think that sometimes we limit ourselves with our opportunities. I saw a great example. 3 of my books were used in the Beijing Olympics, and by the Chinese government. They published a whole pile, like hundreds of thousands of these books, to give to small business owners that were within a couple of kilometres of the Olympic venues, to teach them how Westerners think about doing business. Now, I would never have imagined that as an opportunity, yet that came, via my publishers, and I made me think, what other opportunities are there? What other, that way? So, I guess I'm not trying to say here's the definitive think bigger, but I just want people that are really looking to use their book to build their business to go, well, okay, what blinkers have I got on here? What am I, not doing? How could I think bigger, act bigger, do bigger, be bigger? What does that really look like? And just really push your own boundaries around that, because that's where the gold will happen. That's where the greatest opportunities will come out, in my view.
That's terrific. Well, Andrew, we've talked a lot about the task of building the business of being an author, the mindset and so on. But soon we're going to talk about the process. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, move into what does it look like now. So, and we've got to start with the mindset. Well, we've got to start with making sure our book is up to the job at hand, of course. But the mindset is key, but then you're right. So, and I've got a number of drivers, 12 drivers that I'll talk about that are, okay, these are the different parts that we need to do that actually we pull those different levers. They're what are actually going to build our business as an author.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking forward to that. But before we go, some takeaways.
So I think number one, we have to do that self-reflection piece again. And that's to ask yourself, do you really have that right mindset to do what it takes to build a business around your book? And it's very specific. We ran through those kind of key elements that make up the right mindset. And it's a chance to go, okay, I hadn't thought about that. I haven't dived deep enough, but now I get it. And get your mindset right first and foremost. Number two for me, I think, is to ask yourself if you're ready to own being an author. I shared my story about my resistance to calling myself an author. I think we have to really know and say, I am an author, step into it, own it, be proud of it. Don't make it an afterthought, because it just won't work in the way that we're talking about here. You just certainly wouldn't be able to build a business around that if you're almost apologetic about being an author. And I think the third mindset point that I have is that really start to think bigger about everything to do with this. Think about bigger possibilities of your book. Think about bigger leveraging. Think about bigger products. Think about just think bigger about the whole concept around that. And I know might feel a little bit open-ended for people, but for me it's all about that challenging yourself to really step into that space again, and that just requires bigger thinking, bigger actions, those things. So that's my three key takeaways.
Fantastic. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Chris.
And that ends this episode of The Business of Being an Author with Andrew Griffiths. To learn more or to contact Andrew, please visit andrewgriffiths.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.